HD 80606b. If you are unlucky enough to live on this planet, you would experience weather so violent it would defy every survival instinct in your body. Temperatures here rocket from freezing cold to an inferno hot enough to melt lead in just hours. That is because while most planets travel in a smooth, circular path around their star, this world does not. Its orbit is stretched out into something that looks more like the path of a comet than a planet. For roughly 100 days, it drifts far from its sun, floating in the freezing darkness. And then it begins a terrifying dive. In a span of just 20 hours, it plunges toward its star, swings around it at a dangerously close distance, and slingshots back into the void. In just 6 hours, the temperature on the side facing the star skyrockets from around 900 degrees Fahrenheit to over 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you were floating in the cloud tops, you would watch the sun swell until it looked 30 times larger than it does in our own sky. This sudden flash frying triggers what scientists call shockwave storms. Winds erupt outward at speeds of 11,000 miles per hour. Then, almost as quickly as it started, the planet swings away and cools so fast it becomes nearly invisible to infrared telescopes. Astronomers are baffled. Normally, the gravity of a star should smooth an orbit like this into a circle, but HD 800,006b resists that change, trapped in its torture loop for another 10 billion years, an endless, screaming cycle of freezing, burning, and freezing again. TRES-2b. In 2011, astronomers identified this planet as the darkest world ever discovered. A gas giant roughly the size of Jupiter, it reflects less than 1% of the light that falls on it. That makes it darker than a piece of coal, darker than black acrylic paint, darker than almost anything humans have ever manufactured. And what makes this more disturbing is that scientists are not entirely sure why. TRES-2b sits dangerously close to its star. Surface temperatures climb past 1,790 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough that reflective clouds made of ammonia simply cannot form. Instead, its atmosphere is likely filled with light-absorbing chemicals like vaporized sodium and potassium, or gaseous titanium oxide. But even these chemicals cannot fully explain why the planet is as black as it is. Something else is swallowing the light, and we do not know what. If you were to float near it, you would not see a totally black sphere hanging in space. Because the planet is so hot, it emits a faint and dim red glow, like the last dying embers of a fire. It would look like a giant burning coal drifting through the void, its surface never quite bright enough to reveal what it truly is. There is something deeply unsettling about a world this large, this close, and this impossible to see. A planet that absorbs almost everything you throw at it and gives almost nothing back. Even now, more than a decade after its discovery, it remains one of the few objects in our galaxy that quietly refuses to be understood. KELT1b. This world is not quite a planet and not quite a star. It sits in a strange in-between category that has left astronomers arguing about what it even is. Technically classified as a brown dwarf, KELT1b is roughly the size of Jupiter, but it is crushingly heavy, packing about 27 times Jupiter's mass into the same space. That density makes it one of the strangest objects ever discovered orbiting a normal star, and it orbits terrifyingly close. A full year on KELT1b lasts just 29 hours. It is so close that its host star scorches its surface to over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to vaporize most metals. But the temperature is not the disturbing part. The disturbing part is what the star's gravity is doing to the planet itself. KELT1b is being physically deformed. The immense tidal forces are stretching it out of shape, pulling it into a distorted, egg-like form as it whips around its star. If you could see it from a distance, it would not look like a clean sphere hanging in space. It would look wrong, bulging, warped, like a world in the process of being pulled apart by invisible hands. Its atmosphere is also strangely reflective, glowing with an eerie brightness on the night side that scientists still cannot fully explain. Some believe it may be radiating leftover heat from its formation. Others suspect exotic clouds of metal or silicate we have never seen before. Whatever it is, KELT1b is a world caught in a slow, silent act of destruction, being squeezed, stretched, and cooked by a star it can never escape. Gliese 436b. The phrase hot burning ice sounds like a paradox, but strange as it sounds, it is actually happening on this planet. Roughly the size of Neptune, Gliese 436b sits dangerously close to its star. Only about 3% of the distance between Earth and the Sun. It is being blasted with so much radiation that it has created a gigantic cloud of hydrogen gas trailing behind it, stretching more than 8 million miles into space. From a distance, the planet no longer looks like a planet at all. It looks like a colossal comet bleeding its own atmosphere into the void. And and it is losing that atmosphere at a terrifying rate, slowly being eaten alive by the very star it orbits. But the strangest thing about this world is what may lie beneath its clouds. While the surface temperature is around 820 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead, scientists believe the interior might be made of hot ice. The gravity and pressure inside the planet are so crushing that water is forced into a solid state, even though it is burning hot. Its chemistry is wrong too. Its atmosphere is filled with carbon monoxide instead of the methane models predict should be there. And its orbit is even stranger. Instead of circling the equator of its star like a normal planet, Gliese 436b travels almost vertically, looping over the star's poles. Astronomers believe it did not start out this way. Something massive, something still hidden in the darkness, likely pushed it into this dangerous path. And now it is trapped, being slowly consumed while the culprit watches from the shadows. KOI-55. This is a planet that survived the impossible. It was eaten alive. KOI-55 once orbited a star known as a subdwarf B star, an object so hot it burned nearly 6 times hotter than our own sun. Then, around 18 million years ago, something catastrophic happened. The star expanded, swelling outward until it turned into a red giant. And when it did, KOI-55 did not just get close to the burning surface, it plunged deep inside it. The planet was swallowed whole, submerged in a churning ocean of plasma. The star stripped away its atmosphere, evaporated its gases, and burned off nearly everything that made it a planet. By every rule we know, it should have been destroyed, torn apart, erased from existence, but somehow it survived. Today, only its scorched rocky core remains, a blackened skeleton of the world it once was. And to understand just how badly it was cooked, consider this. Even after millions of years drifting through space, its surface temperature is still around 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you were to teleport to its surface, you would not burn. You would not melt. You would vaporize into a cloud of atoms faster than your brain could register that you had arrived. KOI-55 now orbits its star incredibly close, completing a full year in less than 6 hours. It is a corpse of a planet endlessly circling the very star that tried to kill it. PSR B1 257 plus 12. Astronomers name this star and its planets after monsters and the undead, and for good reason. The central star, called Lich after a fictional creature that uses dark magic to control the dead, is a pulsar, a type of neutron star that acts like a lighthouse in space. It spins at a horrifying speed, rotating about 160 times every single second. Its surface temperature reaches nearly 52,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and orbiting it are 3 planets that were the very first exoplanets ever confirmed, discovered back in the early 1990s. To understand why they are called zombie planets, imagine standing on one. You would be bathed in constant deadly radiation streaming from the pulsar, radiation strong enough to sterilize any life that ever tried to exist there. Looking up at the sky would be maddening. Because the star spins so fast while firing beams of energy in tight focused pulses, it would not appear as a steady sun. It would look like a violent strobe light flashing 160 times a second, lighting the alien landscape in rapid fire bursts of blinding blue-white light. And there's a reason these worlds carry the name of the undead. They are not normal planets. They likely formed from the debris left over after 2 white dwarf stars crashed into each other and merged billions of years ago. In other words, these planets were born from a graveyard, built from the shattered remains of dead stars, circling a corpse that refuses to stop spinning. They are, in every sense of the word, the walking dead of our galaxy. HD 188753 app. If you were somehow standing on the surface of this planet, you would witness something that seems impossible. The sun would set over the horizon, only to be immediately followed by a second sun, and then a third. This was the first planet ever reported in a tight triple star system, meaning it has not 1, not 2, but 3 suns above it. There is a main yellow star, very similar to our own, and orbiting nearby are 2 smaller stars that circle each other in a tight dance while both spin around the main star. If you could survive on a hypothetical moon nearby, your shadow would split into 3 different directions, and true darkness might never come, as the different suns took turns lighting up the sky. But its existence raised an unsolved scientific mystery. HD 188753 AB is a gas giant slightly heavier than Jupiter, orbiting so close to its main star that it completes a full lap in just 3.5 days. And according to the rules of how planets form, that should be impossible. Gas giants are supposed to grow far from their stars, in cold regions rich with dust and gas. In this system, the 2 nearby stars would have starved that process, cutting off the material needed to build a world this size. There simply should not have been enough room or enough matter for it to exist. And yet, the data suggested it was there, but here is where things get truly disturbing. It might be a ghost. After astronomers announced its discovery in 2005, another team tried to find it again in 2007, using more precise instruments. They found absolutely nothing. They claimed that if the planet was real, they would have seen it. No observation has confirmed it since. And to this day, no no one knows if HD 188753 AF was ever really there at all. KELT-9b, 670 light years from Earth, sits a gas giant 3 times heavier than Jupiter, and it is so hot that even the molecules in its atmosphere are being torn apart. Water cannot survive here. Carbon dioxide cannot survive here. Even heavy metals like iron and titanium are ripped from solid form and turned into vapor. KELT-9b orbits a massive burning blue star, and it is locked in a terrifyingly tight embrace. A full year here lasts less than 1.5 Earth days, and because it sits so close, one side is permanently facing the star, constantly blasted by radiation. On this day side, temperatures climb past 7,700 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of many stars. Metals on this world go through an endless nightmare cycle. On the day side, they evaporate into gas. Winds then carry them to the slightly cooler night side, where they briefly condense back into droplets, before being dragged back to the day side and vaporized all over again. A permanent, screaming loop of molten metal weather that never stops. The radiation is so intense that the planet is puffing up like a balloon, its atmosphere swelling outward under the assault, but it is also losing itself. Its star is stripping away about 10 million tons of material every single second, creating a massive tail of gas trailing behind the planet, making it look like a gigantic comet slowly bleeding into space. And its fate is grim. In less than 1 billion years, its star will expand into a red giant, and KELT-9b will be devoured, eaten alive by the very sun that is currently incinerating it. A world that has spent its entire existence being slowly killed, only to be swallowed whole in the end.